of facilitators doing a train the trainer type of session in body language and overall communication for facilitators who train teachers on military bases all throughout the world.
And you mentioned for military bases, is that like an educational teachers on those bases?
Yes, educational teachers in American schools all throughout the world.
And I can picture that too, because that's a setting to where, kids can be shutting down, because it's the location, it is different, and trying to draw them into it. Have you ever worked with any groups where they're trying to deal with those who might be suffering from trauma, whether it's severe or, I hate to say minor, but maybe a little more common to most of us?
Absolutely. We've worked with a number of groups. We've worked with individuals with disabilities. We work with groups that have looked at prison time in the past. We've worked with groups of individuals with different levels of disabilities. And we've worked with blind industries. And we've worked with a number of groups and individuals who you would think would have a hard time doing what they're doing. Fact is, these folks do better many times than our most seasoned CEOs.
Always. In fact, the first time we worked with Blind Industries of Maryland, we purposely took out our activities on body language and realized it was our own ignorance, because as we were doing one of the public speaking games, one of the participants commented on our body language and said, "You must be taller, you must have your arms crossed." And we realized that they're using other senses to pick up on a lot of body language cues. And we realized that we had made an error in assuming that they weren't picking up on body language. And one day we were working with women transitioning out of homelessness. The same day we were at a wealth management firm. And one might assume that one group would be better communicators than the other, but they rivaled each other. And a lot of what we do is about taking away those assumptions that we make and helping others to remove them as well.
Yeah, and do we underestimate students and athletes and how they read our body language?
Absolutely, all the time. I mean, kids are geniuses. They say that the younger the kids, they pick up on body language in a heartbeat because they can tell their parents' moods and manners, and they're the best lobbyists and negotiators, right? Because they can understand these things. I mean, we definitely underestimate when coaches on the sidelines are acting in certain ways. Kids pick up on that. And unfortunately, that's a learned lesson that they many times replicate. And we've seen that with the advent of the yelling parents at games who fight with referees. It creates a bad situation that doesn't promote good sports-like conduct.
Is there, I guess, what is it? Because I definitely agree with you, having raised 4 kids, and each one you find is, because there's more people in the house, is picking up on more and more body language. What is it to where, I'm going to say at some point we maybe lose out on that, as we start getting into whether it's later in high school or in college or early in the career? At what point do we almost lose that instinctive way to read people and understand what situation we're in?
It's because as we get older, we become jaded and less intuitive. Kids don't have the wealth and encyclopedia of prior experiences to judge things off of, and they are much better readers of body language. As adults, a lot of times we'll use the stories of things that have happened before in similar situations and let those dictate our ideas of what's going to happen instead of watching what's right around us. Keith and I had talked to an FBI agent a while ago, and he was studying 2- and 3-year-olds because he found that they are the best readers of body language.
Really? That I'm going to have to ask you, can you elaborate a little? Because you got me hooked on that one, on how he was determining that from 2- and 3-year-olds.
He did a number of studies with parents and the kids and understanding when the parents did a certain action, when they had certain facial expressions, when they were up close to the kid or backed off, crossed their legs, crossed their arms, the emotional change in the child. And when you do multiple studies, you can notice that their ability to pick this up was highly advanced compared to, many adults. They have no clue when someone's angry. say the wrong thing at the wrong time because they're not picking up on those small, subtle cues.
And we've seen that when we've gone into our children's classrooms. We were in one of our daughter's fourth grade classrooms last year, and Keith and I will often ask groups when we're talking in front of them to figure out what Keith and I do in order not to step on each other's words. Yes, he could smush me because he's 6'9", but what to do to not step on each other when we're talking. And the fourth graders are always able to pick up on the body language we use to not interrupt one another, and adults have no clue.
Interesting. And I was visualizing that, and that is absolutely right. When we talk to each other, and we all as adults have something important to share because we're trying to, say what we know, not so much what we think to prove that. I can't actually picture seeing what the other person is doing. I mean, they're there in front of me. My eyes are open, but I'm not looking at their eyes, their hands, their posture as to whether they're sitting back to kind of receive what I have to say or if they're, just dying to get something out. What can we do? Let's just say, I'm going to throw the number out there, for upper class high schoolers before they go into the world of go learn and stop being, so intuitive, get rid of that touchy-feely stuff of, join the real world. What can be done, or what do you think would be helpful in, I'm going to say the academic, the collegiate setting, because I've got a daughter that's a sophomore now, and I've got one that in a year and a half, another one will be in college. I want them to come out being capable. I don't really care too much about what they've remembered, but really what skills, bigger skills that they've learned.
There's a simple way you can do this, and we do this every day, and it's go to places where they're populated with people, observe people, and ask your son or daughter, what do you see? What do you notice? What's their mannerisms? How are they walking? How are they holding their head? And then create a composite, very similar than the FBI does when they're creating a composite of someone that they think has been in some kind of action. Create that composite. Rebecca and I go to many different places with very different populations and demographics, trying to figure out the story of the individuals walking past you, their mood, their mannerisms, where they came from, maybe their religious background, economic level, maybe their educational level. Work on that, and many times you will then build a repertoire, a practice that you'll quickly be able to size a person up and then place them. You won't always be 100% accurate, but you'll then focus on that more than you'll focus on the words.
You'll be more open to it. Have them take the bus and train once a day for a week, and have them practice making a conscientious effort to be open, to appear to be open. Because when you do that, all kinds of people will come up to you and share their stories and tell you things, and then have them one day act in more of a closed way and have them watch what happens. And those social experiments are incredibly telling.
I would have to completely agree with that because what you started very much head on talking about was a big topic on this show that a lot of our guests have brought up, which is that of empathy. And usually you hear about it and you assume that there's something horrible that's happened to somebody, but it is people watching, but without, the usual gossip, like, I bet I know what they did wrong, or I can't believe they're wearing that, or something like that. Exactly. And I started doing more of that just as I go for a walk or if I'm sitting again, watching people go by, and it's surprising how many more people talk to me. Or as I'm walking somewhere, I've had more people in probably the last 6 months have pointed me in the direction I needed to go, told me something nice, were smiling. Before I said anything or even approached them, they were fairly stone-faced, but it's been very, very unusual, I would have to say, that people have been offering me free things. I mean, not expensive stuff, but you need help with this? Oh, take this, have another one. Whether it's, at a restaurant, at a newsstand, whatever it may be, all minor things. But these things weren't happening before when it was simply me thinking about the next thing I was getting onto. So is it me connecting with them, or am I allowing them to connect with me?
It's both. And Keith and I use this often. If we're in a situation where we feel unsafe, instead of cowering in a corner or going the other way, we'll use that body language and be open and ask that person who might look a little bit off for the time or make a comment about the weather. And once you make eye contact with someone and engage them in conversation, there's an instant comfort that tends to happen. And we will utilize this to help make ourselves feel safer too, if we're ever in a situation that may feel unsafe.
And back to your situation, people have felt marginalized. They don't feel like they have a voice. This has become a very fast-paced world. And when you offer that smile, when you're open, they are going to cling to you because you are showing that empathy that many people do not show. And that's why they're giving you things and giving you gifts and giving you other opportunities, because you are a rarity in a world that unfortunately is becoming increasingly cold and individualistic.
Right. You're showing that you're open to connecting, whereas a lot of people walk around with their blinders, looking down on their phones with headphones, very much showing they're closed off. And Keith and I, one of the things that likely drew us together also, since we were kids, we've always had strangers come up and tell us their problems, their life stories, anything. And a lot of it is from sitting back and showing that you're open to it.
Yeah, I can definitely identify with that. And so when we're dealing with kids, often, we'll tell them, hey, time to focus. And, we'll snap out of it. We're trying to get their attention. We're trying to connect, and we'll connect through words that sound really good. Get focused. Let's pay attention. Let's get in here and now. We're going to do this. What's that really doing?
There's the reality that sometimes you have to do it, right? Sometimes you have to get focused and do it right away.
Yeah, we got 8 kids between the three of us here. We know about that.
I don't even play sports. That isn't baseball.
Sometimes the reality is you got to get focused. If you got to go somewhere and you got to load up the car, get focused. Let's get dressed. Get what you need. Let's get to the car. That's the reality. Then the opposite question is to think, well, why aren't they focused? And that's when we have more time on our hands to figure out where's that focus going? And we have to remember that they're probably not focused because kids are developing their brains. So their heads are all over the place. So it's a catch-22, and I don't know how we'll solve that.
And kids are also living in such a dramatically different time than we grew up in, where there is instant gratification with everything in life. And it can be hard for them to have to wait or focus on something else. And a lot of it is about having those dinner table conversations when you're not rushing off to the car or there's a non-emergency situation. For example, one of the things we did with the kids when they were little was we came up with the term code serious. A pediatrician had suggested having this, and it was wonderful advice where we used it sparingly, but in a situation where we needed them to stop right away, maybe it was crossing a street and a car was coming fast, we would say code serious, quietly, not in a yelling way. And they knew that they needed to listen right away and do whatever we said and ask any questions later.
And I think you're right, because it's, hey, what are you doing? That is one of those things where that's really confusing. Like, I wasn't doing anything. Mm-hmm. That's the response. And I always tell my kids, especially my oldest daughter, I was by far the worst dad to her because I didn't know what I was doing and the prompts I was making that I'm sure are very confusing. And if you do anything 3 or 4 times, you get pretty good at it, or better at least. And I definitely think a lot of those, when they were younger, would say, what do you mean, what am I doing? Those went away. I want to go back to the dinner table thing you just said about talking to kids, because I just pulled up here. I'm looking at my screen. Your article, parents said, kids said, one family sets ground rules for communication. And that I want to really make sure we don't miss out on this discussion, because this was the article that I read, and it's short and it's sweet. But it just speaks volumes that we could talk for an hour on any one of these tangents. But I'd like you to kind of get into that discussion about what you and your kids are talking about in the dining room.
Well, it's a lost art. Let's face it, people are not having those conversations. TVs replaced them. Smartphones have replaced them.